Hello and welcome to Horror Boys. I'm Austin, joined as always by
Chris
and Isaiah.
And we are the Horror Boys, and this is a podcast on the internet. I was probably in the wrong order. I still don't know the intro. We're 22 episodes in and I still don't know what I'm doing.
You'll iron it out eventually.
Yeah. Or I'll change it every week.
Will be the intro.
I want to keep our fans on their toes.
Yeah.
You never know what you're gonna get. Today we are talking about a movie because that's what we do on this podcast. If you're a first-time listener, we talk about horror movies in a deep dive review fashion. That's it. That's what we do. Yeah, we talk about everything that happens in the movie, and I try to give you facts if there are any.
And along the way, we'll give you our thoughts and opinions.
Yeah. And then we'll reiterate them at the end.
Yeah.
That's the format. Now you know the format. I guess we'll jump into the show. You saw the title. Today we're talking about Hatchet 2. Deep breath as I start. And alright. We open on our retconned Mary Beth. Which, there are going to be some opinions shared on this podcast. I already have heard. There might be varying even. Ooh. She is now played by, a horror icon. Despite what some people she is. You can make that face. She's in like tons of stuff. She is her biggest role was being Jamie Lloyd. Sorry, from Halloween 4 and 5. She is the little girl in Halloween 4 and 5.
Oh. Huh. Yeah, I'm not impressed so far, but all right.
I mean, whatever. This is gonna be a weird episode because I think she is a treasure. I think she was really fun in this movie and is great in Halloween 4. Halloween 5, the direction was bad, but we're not talking about those movies today.
I thought that she was mostly good. I just had such a hard time getting over the fact that in just about every scene, she looked like.
Yeah, she does have the rock eyebrow the entire time.
All the time.
I don't know if that's just like something that she's like, if that's just her resting expression.
It might be. I don't know.
But it is always like. And anyways, yeah. Yeah. That was also something I could not get over. Once I noticed it, I was like, huh.
Because she even cried that way. Like, it's impressive.
She had something in her eye during filming, okay, guys?
I don't know. But yeah, I thought for the most part she was good.
I liked her for the most part. She also was in the Halloween reboot, which was a cool little thing. Those are the big ones. She's also done a bunch of other stuff. You guys might not care about her, but the horror community at large, from what I understand from the internet, really loves her. And, I'm with them. I like her. She's fun. So she is now stabbing Victor, because we were opening right where the last one ended, because Victor Crowley is choking out Mary Beth, and Victor Crowley
starting out where the last one left off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. At first I wasn't sure if it was where we left off, but I picked up kind of quickly because, as you said, it was a completely recast Mary Beth.
It's true.
And I was like, oh, is Victor Crowley just at it again, killing some random teen in the swamp? No, this is Mary Beth.
Yeah.
And she is running for her life after she stabs.
She stabs him in the eye to escape. Then she is then saved by Jack Cracker, baby. He's back.
And for some reason, his eye is missing.
Yeah. I'll give you that.
Well, now that he's a wise old advisor, instead of just some schmo, you've got to make him... Yeah, he's got to be like this Tiresias Odin figure. Like, he's got wisdom. Take out one of his eyes.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know if he is.
Still drinks his own
Literally
pee.
Not even a day has passed since the last movie.
Yes, like just
his
hours.
Eye's missing now, and it's healed up. So I don't know. Victor Crowley doesn't look the same. Jack Cracker doesn't look the same. Mary Beth doesn't look the same.
I mean, to be fair to horror in general,
Voodoo Guy.
There are lots of movies where that is the exact same scenario. Most of the Friday the 13th took place like back to back, but he changed every movie because it's been years or at least a couple of years, and makeup changes. You can't that just happens. that's a movie issue. I mean, but
that's valid. Doesn't make it any less jarring.
I mean, I guess you didn't. I feel like because you don't like this movie, you're willing to attack every little thing that you normally would just look over in other movies.
Maybe.
But yeah, so she starts telling him everything and how everyone's dead, and including her family, and then he gives her some pee to drink because that was the best joke in the last movie. You loved the pee joke, right? Pee joke.
And she almost drinks it, but then she doesn't.
Did I say Mary Beth's actress's name? I know I said what you did, but did I say her name was Danielle Harris, the new actress?
Sure. One of us said it at some point.
If I didn't, it's Danielle Harris. Yeah, and she's still played by John Carl Buechler, legendary, effects artist, who, he's here. There's another actor who we'll get to later who is not an actor, but is a somewhat of a legendary figure in horror movies, and it's like maybe we don't give the ones who aren't actors roles.
Is it the uncle?
Yeah,
quote unquote. Yeah, because he doesn't feel like an actor.
No, Uncle Bob is a horrible actor, and when we get to him, I'll explain who he is and his history with horror and why.
As soon as you said he's not somebody else isn't an actor, I was like, oh.
Yeah, no, it's Uncle Bob.
Is it this guy who didn't feel like he was acting at any point during the movie?
Yeah, no, Uncle Bob was not a great actor, and we'll get to that later. We're a little ahead of ourselves here. But yeah, so after she doesn't end up drinking the pee, he ends up freaking out when he finds out that her name is Mary Beth Dunstan. Bum, bum, bum. Because apparently that means she's the daughter of Samson, which means Paul from the last movie, Robert Englund. He has a first name. Woo! Samson!
Samson Dunstan.
I mean, he's still dead and not in this movie, but hey, he has
terrible name for a child, by the way. Samson Dunstan.
I mean... Robert Englund's like...
Well, that's beside the point.
Robert Englund's really old, so, time frame wise, that adds up. But yeah, it's not a great name. But it's, a Louisiana name?
I mean, probably somewhere.
But it's not as cool as Mary Beth, because that's 2 names. Samson,
that's true.
Only 1 name. I mean, I guess you could say it's son of Sam, so I guess it is kind of still 2 names. Wow.
Oh, wait a minute.
Well, yeah. And then he kicks her out, freaking out because, he's not allowed to help Mary Beth. That's not allowed. You can't help a Dunstan. And he tells her if she wants to know more, to go to Reverend Zombie.
That's right.
Yep. And then
Reverend Zombie's making a reappearance, baby.
Which, you know what? I think Tony Todd is a treasure, and I am completely cool with him being in this movie.
No, he is the best part of this movie.
I don't disagree.
Period. He is the best part of the movie.
What are you talking about? It's definitely Vernon.
Vernon?
We'll get to Vernon when we get to Vernon. I'm sorry, I keep teasing the hot button issues. But yeah.
So many.
Yeah. So now we have Cracker, who is just hanging out, and he's going through Shapiro's bag. He finds the camera from the first movie, and we get a bunch of random naked chicks.
Yep.
Because like we established last movie, the Shapiro character was a creep who lied to women to get them to show themselves naked on camera. Then there is
we learned that
drive
he's even
home.
creepier than expected.
Yeah.
But to really drive that home, he's filmed asking an underage girl to do things.
To be fair, to be ever so mildly fair to the non-existent character of Shapiro, the video does end when he finds out how old she is. He doesn't keep pressuring her after she tells him his age. But also, she was made to look very young.
That's only because Crackerjack's
that's true. He does kind of fast forward.
Yeah, he
so
just
maybe,
rewinding.
Here's the thing, though. Shapiro, who cares? He was from the last movie. But what is cool,
he died.
The best characters from the last movie do get to make a quick 1-second appearance in Misty and Jenna. Not 1 second, but they get a quick little Misty and Jenna back and forth.
They get a half a second scene.
Yeah, it's like a 20-second scene, which is all a cameo from the last movie of dead characters needed to be.
That's fair.
I thought they were still as funny as, maybe not as funny as ever. It wasn't their peak, but it was on level with where they were in the last movie for the most part.
It was the best character chemistry we experienced during this movie.
I disagree, but we will get to that when we get to that, because as you can tell, me and Chris have slightly, at the very least, differing opinions on this.
Just very, ever so slightly.
Well, yeah, the thing is, I mean, spoiler for the end, which I don't like to do, but I don't love this movie. I just am not going to let you completely crap on everything in this movie, because I do think it had some merit.
Don't worry, I'm going to do it anyway.
I know, but I'm just...
Simpson, what a terrible name. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. How dare his character name be Samson? Oh. How dare makeup change in a movie that came out 3 years later? It happens. I'm sorry. It happens with every horror icon.
Samson Dawson is not a great name for anybody.
But it's not a bad name either, though.
And it's only something that I really thought about once we brought up the fact that his name was Samson.
And you want to crap on everything, so any little thing I find, you're going to be like, that's bad too. And I'm like, all right, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this will be a 2-hour podcast because I'm going to have to keep saying, no, I don't think that was bad, to everything Chris tries to crap on. Except for Vernon. We'll get to Vernon. But yeah. So then after he gets their little arguing cameo, he gets spooked by some noises before Crowley shows up, and he rips out his intestines, trips him with them, chokes them with them, to the point where after choking him, pops his head off, and blood splatters all over the wall. And as I say that, as I read that out, that sounds like such an epic kill. But kind of the theme of this movie, for some reason, it just doesn't quite work. I don't know, something about it just didn't feel good. Like, it wasn't, like, that sounds like, when you read that on paper, that sounds like an epic kill. In practice, it just kind of happened, and the blood didn't look great. One thing I do remember noticing was there was no blood like on his hand really, or the intestines. There was no blood from that part of it, which there should have been. He ripped out his stomach. So, which is kind of my first opinion on the themes, as we say here, is in general, I think everything the last movie did, this movie did not do as well. But also, I really, really liked the last movie. So, but yeah, I thought for the most part, everything in this movie was a little bit worse. Except for, I liked some of the acting. And I didn't really care about any of the acting in the last movie. But,
I mean, while we're on the precedent of the kills, we can talk more about it at the end. But if you want to redeem the kills in Hatchet 2, you could just see them as being a bit cartoonier.
Yeah, no, that's fair. But you could do, like, there's an example of another kill, which we'll kind of spoil here as just a real quick thing. There is the boat kill that I didn't love because I felt like it was a little too over-the-top cartoony, but it was still visceral in its cartoony nature. There was still gore. This didn't feel gory. It felt like slapstick blood comedy in this scene. Like, the blood looked like paint hitting the wall, not like blood.
And his head just kind of like pop off like a Lego. Like, it just...
And after some of those, like, effects we saw in the last movie, I was hoping for, like, really cool kills. And I don't think that, for the most part, I think there was a couple. There's one or two here or there where I go, oh, that was fun. Okay. Yeah. But in general, I don't think the kills landed nearly as well as the last one. But, I still don't think any of them were bad.
Yeah. No,
there were a couple
definitely still the shining star of the movie, aside from Reverend Zombie.
I will also say there is a, spoiler again, there is a quick montage of some kills. Some of those ones weren't great, but they also had some of the better ones mixed in with them. There's a moment where we go through a montage of like 6 or 7 kills. 3 of them are great, and then there were also like some guys who get stabbed halfway off screen and stuff. But so I guess those would be the kills I'd say that weren't good. But yeah, that's just general thoughts in the middle, because, it's one of those episodes. The energy is off, so we're going to just break our rules. But yeah, so after he gets killed, and that kill that should have been amazing, but just for some reason wasn't, we head to some more crappy music over the credits, like the last one. Not quite as crappy of the music, but boy are these credits hard to watch. They are so choppy, and like, God forbid you have like any sort of video sensitivity, like light sensitivity, not video. Like, yeah, this movie will like send you into a seizure in the credits for no reason.
Yes. I fast forwarded through the credits, I'll be honest. Yeah.
See, the thing is, I will say,
the music combined with like the flashing was just intolerable.
And I get that, but you did, because you fast forward, you did miss a couple actually cool little Easter eggs in them, which is which once again you're not going to care because you didn't like this movie, but I thought it was cool. Was that there was a bunch of like props from the last movie, like outfit pieces and stuff, like the Newberry comic shirt from the main character, the old man's hat. Like there was one or two others, but like there was a couple like, oh cool, like showing that. Oh, that also it wasn't the old man's hat. Maybe it was the old man's hat as well, but it was also Sean's hat, his voodoo hat. And it was like, oh cool, it's like showing that this is the same forest that these people died in last night. I liked it. But here's the thing. I almost didn't see it because the first half of the credits were, like we mentioned, absolutely atrocious and literally like could have given someone a seizure for no reason. Like there are times where like it makes sense to make things like when like a light gets broken in a room and you get those moments of like flashing lights that could still hypothetically hurt someone, but like at least it made sense in the plot. This was just an editing choice. Like this isn't justified at all. There are times where those moments are justified, at least. This wasn't. And it was like, okay, cool. Why are we doing this god-awful editing in our credits? Where did I go?
We're on the credits.
Some cool shots. I already read that. All right. Now we're back to the, Bourbon Street kind of area. I don't know if it's actually Bourbon Street, but it's downtown New Orleans. And we have a random cameo of Adam Green, the director and writer. Yep. He is puking while his name...
side of the corner.
Yeah, he is puking while his name is on the screen, which, I like when credits do clever things like that. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. His credit was over him. That was funny. Was it anything like to like write home about being great? No, but I thought it was a funny little credit moment, which is weird. Which is like, I guess, kind of an example of this movie is these credits alone are such like a good example of this movie where some of it was just so bad, but also I liked parts of it. It's like, why did you have to do half of what this credits did? It's like, I don't know. The second half of the credits were like a good credits, but then the first half were seizure-inducing.
A light show?
Yeah, it's like
pyrotechnics.
Yeah. Now Mary Beth, she heads to Reverend Zombie, and who is still played by Tony Todd. That's cool. Like we mentioned earlier, Tony Todd. He is. I think at least me and Chris, I will agree, he is the best part of this movie. And that's coming from people. One guy who kind of liked it and one guy who hated it, but still, no one can crap on Tony Todd because he's Tony Todd.
I think I'd probably agree.
Yeah. I was hoping you were about to like go full like, no, I hate Tony Todd. I was like, oh yeah,
Tony Todd blows, dude. Yeah.
But yeah, so once she goes into the shop, real quick fun little cameo for. I don't think I would have even noticed if I hadn't, watched the first movie on Blu-ray and saw the trailer before it. But on the TV in his shop, there is a quick little news clipping of a girl from the movie, the lead from Frozen, the horror movie Adam Green directed, not the Disney movie. But yeah, it's a movie about skiing where they get trapped on a ski lift. And it's like the girl from that is talking about, oh, I'm never going to go skiing again. And then they turn off the TV. And I was like, I like that. I respect when a director's like, hey, I'm going to put a little Easter egg to my other movie that, it didn't add a lot to this movie. No, but it was a fun little moment.
Yeah.
Which is how I feel about a lot of the casting we'll get to a little bit later once we get more characters here. There was a lot of characters where it's like, did it need to be that actor? No, but as someone who's dove headfirst into the horror world, I like seeing the fact that in this movie, spoiler, we get to see one of the Jasons fight one of the Leatherfaces in a hand-to-hand fight. That's pretty dope on paper. And also I also think he actually was a pretty good actor throughout. He wasn't like, Uncle Bob, who was rough throughout all his scenes. Trent did a good job in his spot. Was he?
Spoilers, Austin.
Sorry, spoiler. Tom Holland's Uncle Bob wasn't great. Not that Tom Holland. We'll get to him when we get to him. Confusing, I know, but names can have more than one person can have the same name. But yeah, so after she gets in there, we get the cameo, and then we find out that Reverend Zombie was actually secretly running the tour from the last film. Ooh.
He's got 2 different tour shops.
Yeah.
How did you feel about this
Madman
twist?
I was fine with it. I didn't care one way or the other about this part of the twist. Like, it was like, whatever, sure. It makes his character important to this movie, but I didn't care about Sean being the one who owned the tour in the last movie. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like an integral part that they retconned to retcon. It was a very simple thing that doesn't really change that last movie, but just adds to this movie. So I was completely fine with it. Do you have an opinion concerning you asked about it, Isaiah?
I'm just curious.
Okay.
I think it felt to me like a little bit of a speed bump, but they got over it well.
That's fair.
So that's just kind of personal. But,
Fair.
Yeah.
Then Reverend Zombie, he gives us a little flashback story of the real story. Slightly, of the Victor Crowley, which, like, is the real story in the sense of it adds a couple more pieces to the story. It doesn't take away what happened previously fully, but kind of adds some reasoning behind it.
Dimension.
Yeah. We find out that Thomas Crowley's wife, Cheyenne, was sick with stomach cancer, and that Thomas did some extramarital harmonica playing, that's how we're going to word it, with her nurse, Lena, who...
While she was on her deathbed.
For a year.
In the next room.
Yeah. They had an affair for a year while his wife was dying.
Mm-hmm.
All right. But it was tragic, is what Tony Todd said. Not that it was, kind of, whatever. So the nurse, her name is Lena, and they have some extramarital affairs. We do. First time ever, the dream we all had, we got to see Kane Hodder play harmonica. That's what we all wanted, right? No one wanted that. That's fair. Oh, you did want that? Okay, sorry. Okay. Isaiah wanted that, so even though Isaiah didn't know who Kane Hodder was when this movie was created, they put that in for future Isaiah's enjoyment.
Yeah. Let's look at man.
But yeah. Excuse me. This happened for a year. But then right as she was finally about to die, Alina pops up in a scene that, once again, on the making of, people talked about being, like, the people who were on the, like the director, writer Adam Green was, like, talking about, oh, this is this really cool, scary moment I wanted to do. Kane Hodder talked about, I thought that was a really cool, scary scene. I thought this scene was laughably bad, her doing the cursing of them, but everyone involved, including one of the reviews I watched, talked about that was like the only moment in the movie that they felt like scared them, unlike the last movie that they felt there was no scares at all, which is fair. I don't think this movie is a type of horror movie that is going for scares for the most part. Slashers don't really try to be scary; they try to be slashers. But yeah. Apparently some people love this scene of her cursing them. I thought it was laughably bad.
Why was it so laughably bad?
I don't know, just something about her just came off cheesy to me. Like, just, she didn't seem... I could tell, even while watching it, before watching these videos, I could tell they wanted her to be scary. But it wasn't. At least in my mind. Like, if some people like it, that's fine. Like, I'm not trying to poo-poo on someone's enjoyment of something. Because, once again, I kind of like this movie overall. But I just thought that... I don't know, I just did not like her cursing them scene for the sake of scares. I'm fine with it for the sake of the story, but I don't know, it just felt like they were trying too hard to make her creepy, but it just didn't land for me.
I thought it was pretty effectively unsettling, so I guess I just scare more easily than you. I don't know.
I don't think that's true, though.
I just did. But...
And maybe it's just, hey, different fears for different folks. That's the new phrase I'm coining, coming out on Horror Bois merch this fall.
Yeah. Bumper stickers.
This also particularly fell flat for me, and I was just like, okay, this is where we're going. All right.
It's fair.
Yeah.
And I will say, overall, this scene is a scene that, for some reason in this movie, I didn't have a problem with in general. Well, I would have, and I do want to kind of point out the perceived possible hypocrisy here of, I've crapped on shoehorned story reasons why a character exists in some of our other franchises we've covered. I did not like Part 9 of the Friday the 13th. I did not like the Amanda Kruger stuff with Freddy. But I think for this one, maybe, and this is me just trying to explain why, in my own mind, why I don't mind this one, is they kind of already from the start tried to explain his origin in the first one, as well as this is only the second movie, while those other ones that really went off the deep end were typically towards the end of their franchise, not the second movie in. That's my thoughts on maybe why I'm a hypocrite.
I really agree with that. Yeah. Because it is different. Like, with our previous two monsters, their origins were, like, pretty spare. And that, I guess, became part of their appeal until it was just bulldozed, right? And this one really wasn't the case. It was just a little bit of an augmentation to a story that was already, like, pretty round, you know? And really most of the detail was for his dad, mainly. So it wasn't like they're slapping this whole new apparatus onto the arc of the franchise. It was just like a little bit more color.
Then we find out that once, part of the curse was that that it was for them and their, bastard unborn child. And Victor's birth, once it happened, it brought on death and pestilence to the whole swamp. Animals died, plants died, including his mom died. Lena died in childbirth. Well, actually, no, she didn't die in childbirth. She gave birth, and then the sight
saw the child
killed him.
Died.
And I have a little note right. It's the next scene. Then we find out that Thomas actually didn't hide Victor to protect Victor, but to protect himself from the truth of his infidelity getting out, which I kind of liked as like a little bit of a once again, and also I think it's this scene. It might be the next. It's a little bit later actually. It's like within this same flashback. But I also want to point out a note I had while I was watching this scene. I wrote, "Little boy Victor looks a lot better in this scene." Then we go to the next scene, which is reused footage from the last movie, and Victor looks like crap. Little kid Victor looks completely like trash again. Like, the makeup in that scene of little Victor was like, alright, like, it's still, like, I don't love the depiction of Victor in any of it, but, like, it felt like they were trying to go for that ugly monster vision, but better at least, like, it was better executed, but they also chose to reuse footage, which completely undermined it.
And it's just so lazy.
Yeah.
Like, here's this child who looks nothing like the other child we just showed you.
Yeah.
Are you immersed yet?
Are you
in
immersed?
The story? What?
Then we get a recap. I don't think it was crap, but we get a recap of Thomas ended up hitting Victor with an axe that they called a hatchet. Once again, it is an axe, but they refer to it as a hatchet throughout this whole series. It is literally the title, even though it is definitely not a hatchet.
Hold on. Is it an axe just because it's got two bits?
It's also like a little bit.
It is short.
It's also, I think, a little bit too long to be a hatchet. But like, it's not a hatchet, from my understanding. Which maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that one guy was wrong. But also, I don't know. I also think it's funny to bring it up now, even if it is wrong. Even if I'm wrong, I think it's funny to keep referring to it as like hatchet in quotes or something. That's just me.
It's a valid reason. Valid reason.
Then I think it's at this point. It might be a little bit later. I don't remember exactly where it falls exactly. If it ends up being a little later, I'll re-mention it then, or I'll skip over it. But at some point during this, we once again get a really well done scene of Kane Hodder actually acting, which is cool. There's this moment where he's like mad at the kids and want them to come out of the house, but they won't, and he's like crying, and like it's weird to see Kane Hodder cry because he's Kane Hodder, but like I think he does a good job like showing emotion, which a lot of stunt guys normally wouldn't be able to pull off as well as I think Kane Hodder did. Then we continue. This is still in somewhat a flashback world. We have Reverend Zombie telling the tragic tale of Victor being trapped, his trapped soul, and we see a bunch of kills. This is that kill montage I mentioned where some of them are great, some of them aren't. There's like 6 or 7 kills. The 3 that were good were, we have a head being split down the middle, which I thought was really cool. Then we have bottom jaw being ripped off of a face. Once again, effects. What you come for this movie, I actually think, surprisingly enough, I think some of our better kills were in this quick flashback montage, not the actual movie.
You can't beat that jaw.
Murdering random hunters.
Yeah. And then the last one that I do think still worked was there was a guy who had his face cut off. It felt very Mortal Kombat-esque, like a very fatality moment. And, I was down with it.
But he was like a ninja all of a sudden,
yeah.
He turns it just kind of...
Yeah. Here's the thing. I think that falls under even my enjoyment of this movie in general. Is it stupid? Yes. Did I still enjoy it? Yes. For this kill, I think this kill actually represents this whole movie. Was it stupid? Did it really make any sense? No, probably not. But was it cool? Yeah. I thought it was cool.
He's a reappearer.
Yeah, he is
a repetitor.
Repeater is the term.
Repeater.
Yeah.
Like a rifle.
I mean, once again, I feel like you're crapping on something that I think is completely fine in this world of him being like this I think him being a repeater stuck in that day, I think it's a fine part of the story.
I mean, no, it's fine considering it's, a monster slasher.
I feel like it's a better explanation of the guy than anything else.
Edited.
I feel like when we compare all these other slashers that just exist because we need to make another movie, at least this movie went, here's why it's possible. And I respect that. It worked. I thought compared to and don't get me wrong, I don't think this franchise, even 2 movies in, is going to be as good as Halloween or Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street. But those franchises, or actually I think I was going to say, and the Child's Play / Chucky franchise, but I actually think for the most part they try to explain why he comes back every time, unlike some of these other franchises. But how many times is Michael Myers should have been dead, or Jason dies and then just comes back because we needed to make another movie? At least this movie goes, well, he's stuck in every night, he will come back. Probably.
And that explanation, that's just an explanation with new voodoo speak of what had already been established in the first movie.
Yeah. I don't know.
It's not just
I liked it.
New.
I like that we got answers that explain it. Here's the thing. Do I think those answers were needed? No, because like I said, I like Friday the 13th. I've started watching the Halloween films. I've made it in the first 5. I wanted to make sure I saw all of Daniel Harris's movies before we did this podcast. And I like that franchise. I didn't love the Friday the 13th franchise on the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise on the whole. I felt that the bad was so bad it took me out of the franchise in general. But once again, those movies, how many times did we complain cool, so they finally said this is why Freddy's gone, and then he was back the next movie because reasons. The Dream Master rhyme will be the reason to kill him until we need to make the Dream Child. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
And that was the most egregious little rant, just because those were direct sequels with the same main character. So that one was the most insulting. But that's not this franchise. Robert Englund is not in this movie except for a picture.
Yeah.
But yeah. So after we get through those kills, we find out from Robert Zombie that her dad was one of the 3 boys who killed Victor. But he wasn't one of them because he was not brave enough to go with them that night. He would have because he was friends with her dad back in the day. But he was not brave enough to go out there. And this is also where we find out the whole repeater thing, which means he's cursed to relive his tragic last night. And then this is going to... Oh,
we don't find out the identity of the 3rd little boy.
We don't find out the next 2 little boys at this point. At this point, we only know about that one, her dad, who is... Yeah. Then we're going to have probably the most divisive scene on this podcast. I already know it will be. We have a moment...
Get some water.
Okay. Well, I'll explain the scene while he gets water. So... we have Mary Beth, who is getting very sad. And she's really emotional in this scene, kind of yelling at him and not liking it. And I said, my notes here are, I think this is one of the best performances we've seen on this franchise in our podcast. I think the only person who delivered a better scene than this was Betsy Palmer in the first Friday the 13th. I think Daniel Harris's acting in this scene was some of the best acting we've seen in all of Horror Boys. But I know, Chris, you hated her acting throughout the whole movie, so I would like to hear your opinion on this scene.
Wait, what scene?
The scene right after it's like the first scene where she like really starts crying and like yelling at him and like not wanting to believe the thing about her dad. And you don't even remember the scene, and that's fair.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I think what really took me out of it was the fact that, like, in the beginning when we first met her, like, her accent just disappears mostly in a lot of her lines.
That's also the same as the last chick. That's bullcrap if that's your reason for not like her. The other chick did it for some scenes and then wouldn't other scenes, because that's what happens when you're not a good actor. Which, fine, maybe Danielle Harris isn't actually a great actor overall.
And then your point is moot.
No, it's not, because I'm saying I don't think she's not good at doing voices. I do think she delivered emotion in this scene. I love
the last actress.
But you were complaining that like you didn't like the new version of her.
This actress is great if her accent also disappears and is playing a Louisiana like native. I don't know. I will fervently defend this point. Her acting is like subpar. Is she good at being an emotional? Yeah, sure. But is she good at like maintaining the character she's trying to be? No.
Fine. I don't think that's enough of a reason not to like her. As for the acting in the scene was still great. But
personally, I think her acting in this scene was just enough to carry us through it. And I liked her acting a lot better in other parts of the movie. I found myself thinking, like, by the time they had made the decision to go on their little expedition, I felt myself thinking, like, her mood has become unnaturally calm at this point. You know, that struck me. You know, that stood out to me in the movie. But I didn't think it was bad. You know, it just kind of toted us through the scene, you know, through this emotional roller coaster, to get to the decision that would become the rest of the movie. And it did the job, but I think she was a lot better in other parts of the movie, personally.
Fair. Wait. She wants to. We also find out that she wants to bring her family's bodies home and maybe get some revenge. With Reverend Zombie says is impossible, but then Reverend Zombie almost immediately says, "All right, fine, I guess." Oh no, that's what it is. He says it's impossible to get revenge because of the whole repeater thing. You will not be able to kill him, except for, which is I feel like kind of weird, especially because at different points in this movie we find out that he has two different theories on how to actually end this. But at this point, he's like, "There's no way to get revenge," except for
he does tell him, "Oh, I heard him."
That's maybe that's, yeah, okay.
Maybe that convinces him. It does play a role in the conversation.
Reverend Zombie wants to get a group of hunters together, and he wants Mary Beth to bring a family member with her. I don't know, maybe an uncle. He definitely leads her to trying to bring her uncle.
Yeah, uncle specifically.
Yeah, her bring your uncle, and you know, so she's like, all right, fine, I'll see if I can get Uncle Bob to come. And then we have Reverend Zombie yell for Sean's brother Justin, who is played by the same actor. The actor is Perry Shen, and I actually think Justin is a 1,000 times better character than he did in the first movie. There's no, I mean, there is kind of a alluding to it as a joke of him doing a fake accent.
Yeah, hold on, we got to get to that.
Yeah,
I think that's probably one of the better jokes that's put in the movie.
Sure, I was more just saying, like, as I was explaining why I like him more than the last one, is he doesn't do stupid accents that make no sense and feel racist at times, and then maybe you weren't real the whole time, but maybe you were. But I think this movie, maybe 3 more years of acting, he got better. I think he did a lot better in this role than he did as Sean.
I'd be inclined to agree with that.
And he wants Justin specifically for him to go get the hunters and the fishers. And there is a specific one that he writes down on a list that he also definitely needs to be there. We don't know who that is yet, but there is one.
Trent.
Spoiler.
We already spoiled Trent's existence.
Yeah, but we didn't spoil who he was or why he was.
And his importance.
We didn't spoil his importance.
That he was one of the Jasons.
No, he was one of the He was one of Leatherface's. He was Leatherface in the third movie. But yeah, whatever. We'll get to him when we get to him. Then we cut to Mary Beth showering. Because, gotta have a shower scene. I mean, there's no nudity.
Gotta have a frosted glass shower scene in
it's
a slasher movie. Yeah.
It's one of those things where I'm like, why is this here? Other than to, I don't know, see her shoulders? I don't know, maybe that's someone's thing.
Well, she's, washing off the grime.
But once again, did we have to see her taking that shower?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Sorry, my bad.
I don't know.
I guess the grime does make sense. We're reminded, oh, right, she, just came out of that swamp.
That's fair. I guess that's re-adding to this feels like 3 years later.
Emphasizing.
Yeah, this is 3 years later. It's a different actress.
3 years later, 6 inches shorter. She's a much smaller actress.
You're not wrong, but also...
fault to her. Yeah. It just is a weird casting choice.
Once again, she's, like a lot of choice in this movie, even though I personally do think she delivered for the most part. I do think that first scene was a little rough with her, though, but I do think she delivered for the most part. But the reason she's here is because she was in Halloween. I mean, that's the same reason that Trent is here. That's the same reason that Uncle Bob is here. That's the same reason that Tony Todd is here. Even though, Tony Todd kills it as Reverend Zombie, but he's only here because he's Tony Todd who played Candyman. Let's be real. This movie was made by a super duper horror fan who just wanted to put a bunch of horror things in one movie, and I love that. But also, did sometimes that make weird choices? Yeah, as we're about to find out as we get introduced to Uncle Bob who shows up. So Uncle Bob is played by writer and director Tom Holland, who is his three biggest roles.
Not Spider-Man.
No, not that Tom Holland, but the writer-director Tom Holland, who wrote Fright Night, Thinner, and the one that I care most about. He also, with the help of Don Mancini, wrote the first Child's Play movie. So I love the first Child's Play movie, and I think he's part of why that movie is probably the best of that franchise, because he is a great writer and director, and Don Mancini has a great vision and sometimes faults, but that's not today. But the point is, Tom Holland, great writer and director. Subpar actor.
Terrible actor.
Yeah, very, he is not good. There are multiple moments where he is supposed to be emotional, and he just there. And there's also moments where he's supposed to... he's old, and you can tell, because he's, never does anything physical. We'll get to his death when we get to it, but they have to hide him in it because he's too old to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
To be fair, he has to be around the same age as Reverend Zombie.
I mean, maybe, but he's not as physically fit as Reverend Zombie.
Nope.
Tony Todd still does stuff in this movie.
Nope.
Yeah, Tony Todd does things. Tom Holland does not.
He does not do this.
He's here.
No, he does not.
Hey. Yeah, I don't know.
But we find out that Uncle Bob is not okay with any of this because, he does not believe that Victor Crowley's real because, spoiler, he knows he's real but doesn't want to believe it. But, he doesn't want her to listen to Reverend Zombie because Reverend Zombie's a liar. His real name is Clive Washington. Which I thought was a little funny. I thought it was kind of okay, that's funny. It's such a not Reverend Zombie name, so it was funny.
Like a normal guy name.
Clyde.
Average dude. But he's also he's a liar, so he tells her, hey, we need to go to the cops instead. Let them deal with this. And she's like, no, I don't. Let's do it later. And he's like, fine, I'll go call the cops. I'll meet back with you in an hour. So he leaves. Actually, real quick, before we move on from this scene, I will mention, in this scene, she's wearing a Twisted Sister shirt, which you might say, okay, who cares? There's actually a fun story that was kind of more tied to the last movie, but I didn't bring it up in that movie. But because he purposely put her in a Twisted Sister shirt in this movie, I'll bring it up here. Kind of a truncated. When Tom Green is a different person. He's an actor. No, Adam Green. When Adam Green was a kid, he loved Twisted Sister, and he ended up writing him this really nice letter once, saying, hey, you mean so much to me, you're the reason why I'm gonna do something creative with my life, and stuff like that. And Dee Snider actually responded to him, who is the front man for Twisted Sister, if you don't know who Dee Snider is. But yeah, so, and eventually it led to them becoming there was at least another letter back from Dee Snider, and part of, I think, Adam's letter was like, I'm going to make a movie someday, and sadly, Dee Snider was never in one of his movies, even though Dee Snider has done some acting, which I think would have been the better, like, full picture thing. He did show up to the premiere of the first movie as, like, his special guest. Like, he came in a limo with him. Like, so this was him paying homage to Dee Snider and how he changed his life. So he put her in a Twisted Sister shirt in this one scene.
Huh.
Okay.
Yeah, cool. That's one of the only fun facts I have that isn't just, this actor was in other thing, because let's be honest, that was most of the fun facts I have for this movie is, hey, this is that person's horror history, because that's most of what they chose to do in this movie was get people with histories in horror movies.
Those facts are fun, for what it's worth.
Yeah, no, I enjoy bringing them up, but it's not like, and then Kane Hodder scared this actress on set. Like, I think that's a much cooler story. This movie... Literally, the fun fact is more about what the premiere of the last movie, but it fits here, so I'll bring it up. Yeah, that's why she's wearing a Twisted Sister shirt. It's not just his love of Twisted Sister. It's a specific, like, love for Dee Snider and how he helped change his life. So that's cool. Now we had...
Oh, hold on. I've got another fun fact. That belongs... when we were covering the montage scene, but the guy who gets his face cut off in the boat is like a pretty decently big name actor.
I know who you're talking about. I don't remember his name, but
and I'm pretty sure he's in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I think you're right.
He's Pippin?
No, it wasn't Pippin.
No, he's the other one.
I don't think he was. I think you're wrong on which actor he is, but he is a famous actor. Like, I'm 99% sure that was not that person.
All right, I'm gonna find it out. But
okay.
Yeah, let's
also, I guess, considering once again I didn't bring it up there, and most people aren't gonna care about this, but a guy who got his jaw ripped off is director Joe Lynch, who what did he do? He did the second Wrong Turn movie. He's done a bunch of episodes of Shudder's Creep Show. He's another horror director that once again they just gave a spot because that's what they do. They give horror director spots. His, on the other hand, it was, hey, get killed real quick so he didn't have to see that he couldn't act like we did with poor Tom Holland. Poor old man Tom. Because here's the thing. Tom's trying his best. The problem is his best is an act. He's not an actor. It's not his fault that he's not good. He's just not good. But yeah.
Dominic Monaghan.
Was it Dominic Monaghan in this movie? In Hatchet 2?
I think it might have been.
That's the thing. You should have went to Hatchet 2's cast and looked to see if he was there. Because just look. Yeah, you're right. That's the name of the guy.
Such a small scene. We'll see if he pops up.
Yeah, but I don't think it's him. That is the actor from the guy from Lord of the Rings. But I don't know if he's in this movie.
I get those two actors specifically mixed up all the time.
That's fair. Now we're heading over to Reverend Zombies, and a bunch of people are showing up. A bunch of the hunters. Some of them include, we meet Trent, who is played by R.A. Mihailoff, who played Leatherface in Leatherface, a Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, which is not one I've seen. I've seen the first two, enjoyed them. Haven't heard great things about this one, but he's in it, and that's cool that he's here. I don't think, to be fair, I don't think anyone went, man, that Leatherface was the reason that movie is bad. It was probably the writing and directing. Leatherface is a character that's kind of there for a lot of it.
Okay, well, I was wrong.
I knew you were.
And it is the actor that I get it mixed up constantly, and it's Sean Ashmore. Which, fun fact, he is in Frozen. Not the Disney movie, but the other one, also directed by it.
Hence why he's here. Because Adam Green likes to give either horror people or people he knows roles.
Yeah.
But, hey...
And for those of you who've seen, the small show The Boys, it's also in The Boys.
The small show? The hit Amazon show?
Yeah,
Okay.
It's just a show you might have seen.
All right. Which, to be fair, I was going to say real quick about Adam Green, give the roles he does. If I made a horror movie, I would also probably cast my friends and horror icons if I could get them. Like, I get it. That's what I would do.
Yes, yeah.
Do you think I wouldn't try to get Kane Hodder to be in my movie? Or Tony Todd or every other person he got? I mean, here's the thing. If I was making a movie with Chris, I'd probably have to fight to get Danielle Harris there, but I would try. Don't worry, guys. If we ever make a horror movie, I'm going to try to get her. It's going to be Chris's fault if we don't. Or hers if your agent doesn't want to do it. But I'm blaming Chris.
Yeah. He's going to see our movie podcast and be like, that guy seems like a douchewad. Why would I want to be in your movie?
Dang it, Chris. You ruined our chances of getting her name on the poster, which would get horror fans to show up.
Dude, thanks a lot.
Thanks. For our horror movie, I have no thoughts about and am not making at all.
In her defense, the eyebrow thing, I'm pretty sure is just
that's just her face. That's just.
I think that is just her face because like all her IMDb pictures, like that's just the face that she has.
Here's the thing: we can all agree. Chris, you can agree that you didn't hate her emotion, so we'll just not give her a voice. She'll just play a character that's California girl or whatever she's from.
Lord of mercy.
Well, that's how we'll make it work. We won't make her try to do an accent. Because to be fair, accent work is hard. That's why no one in any of this franchise can do it well.
Whoa, what are you talking about? Shot? I mean...
Yeah. Yeah. Alright, so Trent shows up. Then we also meet Leighton and Avery, who is Leighton's ex. Then Justin is doing a bad French accent, which, we talked about is a joke. It's a play off of his bad accent in the last movie.
And then Trent walks in the room.
Yeah. And tells him to stop.
Trent is like, cut the crap.
Yeah. And he does for a little bit.
And then he does
until he picks back up. But that's fine. It was funny.
But, they acknowledge the fact that he does the stupid accents. And I appreciate it.
Then we also meet Vernon. Vernon, who is played by Colton Dunn, who is an actor who I actually really love in other things.
What's he in?
He's in the TV show Superstore. It was an NBC show. It's a sitcom. But I think he does a really good job being funny in that. I've also seen him on this... Rooster Teeth used to have this improv show they did. It's a YouTube channel, and they had this improv show. And he was on that, which showed that he could be funny on his own as well. But for some reason... Boy howdy, which is why I say if we were to have random awards, I would give Vernon the what's the word I was going to look for? I forgot. It was going to be the most disappointing because I saw him and was like, oh, cool. I like Colton Dunn. This is going to be a good character. And even in this first scene, I thought his jokes about the cookies were passable. Like, they weren't the funniest things I've ever seen, but they were like, okay, he's going to be kind of the funny, lighthearted guy. Cool, he'll be fun. And then that's what they try to do. He is the comic relief of this movie. But most of his crap does not land in this movie.
Oh, I mean, most of the jokes don't.
There's like one scene that I think was intentionally supposed to be funny that is. And we'll get to that when we get to that. And you guys might disagree when we get to it. We'll see. But I think there was one scene that was... Also, I will say there is one other...
Death?
No.
But it is a death.
Yeah, it is a death.
I know exactly what Austin's talking about, and I think that is probably the only scene that I actually found funny.
There's another scene that we will get to when we get to it. I think there was one actual other time in the movie where I actually thought Colton Dunn was funny, but it was the second half of a scene where he wasn't funny in the first half. So Vernon was my most disappointing part of this movie because I wanted to love him because I do genuinely like the actor. So like this is the one moment where like, Colton Dunn, when we cast you in our movie, we'll give you better writing. Please, I love you, but this movie's bad. I'm sorry. I don't know if it's your fault. I'm gonna err on the side of it not being your fault because I've seen stuff where I do like you. This was bad. You were the worst part of this movie, which is a shame.
Oh, I don't know about that.
The worst scene in this movie is him. We will get to it in a little bit.
All right.
But yeah, then we find out that from Reverend Zombie that the plan is for them to be hunting Victor Crowley, and most of the hunters leave. One of the hunters that leave in this scene while they're leaving is, once again, let's do it. It's time for a random horror cameo. That's right. One of the people who leaves is the legendary Trauma producer Lloyd Kaufman, who, if you don't know what Trauma is, their biggest franchise that Trauma was involved with was the Toxic Avenger franchise. But they've also done a lot of other really like cheesy B movies. They are like B movie kind of people. A lot of their movies aren't great, but there are also some like Toxic Avenger. I haven't seen it, but I've heard for what it is, it's fun. And Lloyd Kaufman was the producer who runs that company. He has a lot of mostly his cameo acting work is in Trauma films. This is one of the few times I've seen him not in a Trauma film. But yeah. It looks like neither of you know anything about Trauma or Lloyd Kaufman, and that's fine. Neither of you seem to even like heard of Toxic Avenger. Have you never heard of Toxic Avenger?
Not even almost.
Wow. All right. I guess we're gonna have to add Toxic Avenger to the the list at some point, just so you guys can see it. I don't think it's gonna be good, but I'll make you watch it. Then Trent tries to leave, but Reverend Zombie convinces him not to because, spoiler, like Chris already spoiled, he needs to be here because he's one of the kids. Don't tell yourself that I told you that, so you can be surprised when it's revealed in the plot. But yeah, he gets convinced to stay with an extra $500 because $500 wasn't worth it because he knows who Victor Crowley is. And he's like, I'm not going to do this. So he's like, $1,000, $500 up front, $500 when you leave. And he's like, all right. Spoiler alert, he only ever gets the $500. Then Uncle Bob shows up. He's here to help protect her.
And that he does.
Yep, he's here. Then there's a funny scene where there's this character the character's not that funny, but there's Chad. He asks Leighton who Crowley is, and Leighton tells him that he's just this boogeyman to scare kids, and he's like, oh, like Jason, which I thought was a little like haha tongue-in-cheek referencing Jason when you have the best Jason in a lot of people's minds in this movie. He also has a secondary reference, which is he's like, oh, I think it might be a little bit later in the scene, but he's at this moment where Chad's like, actually, from my hometown, we have our own boogeyman story. It's Leslie Vernon. And then he gets cut off before we can go into it further, which is a reference to Behind the Mask, the story of Leslie Vernon, which is a horror comedy that's like a parody of slashers and some elements like that. But yeah, I thought that was cool. Once again, as someone who is dove headfirst into horror, whenever to be fair to this movie, to be fair to people who don't like this movie, what I'm trying to say actually is, I am being manipulated like they're trying to, and it's working on me. I'm going, horror reference, cool, and that's fair. And that might not be enough for some of you, and that's fine. I do get that. But for me, I'm like, oh, that's cool that they referenced Leslie Vernon. Cool. I know that's a movie. I haven't seen that movie yet, but I know it exists, so I'm like, oh, that's funny.
I watched a review of that movie, and it looks like an actually decent movie.
Yeah, no. I've heard good things about it.
You're just rollicking through the Easter egg hunt. Right?
Yeah, that's this movie. That's this movie.
It all fell flat for me.
And that's fair.
I'm glad it hit for somebody.
But yeah. Then there's, real quick, just the other two hunters that stayed were a man named John, whose whole character arc is that he doesn't talk for some reason. It's never explained. There's, I guess, a throwaway joke where he mouths something eventually that I don't think I even wrote down when it happens, but like that's his arc, is he's silent.
It still manages to not play the part that well.
He's just there.
I must say.
And here's the thing, I looked him up. I don't think he's like a known person. I think his connection to horror was he was like involved in Hatchet, like behind the scenes. So once again, it's giving Adam Green's friends a job. And there's also Cletus, who is kind of a big hillbilly.
The best part of this movie.
Are you serious? Did you actually like Cletus, or is this like?
Are you kidding me? Yes, I like Cletus. Yes, obviously.
I didn't specifically care one way or the other about Cletus. Your enthusiasm seemed too much for me that I was like, oh, this is a joke, right? But hey, if it's not, that's fine. I didn't have. Here's the thing: if you went Vernon was my favorite part of this movie, I would be like, what the crap is wrong with you? But Cletus was not offensive in my mind. Cletus was just kind of there.
I would be inclined to agree with Isaiah on. Maybe not to, the best character in the movie, but absolutely, like, the best hunter that we get in this, like...
Cast of hunters.
Yeah.
That's fair. That's fair.
Our peanut gallery, I think.
If I was...
and Chad together...
Push come to shove, because I didn't really like any of the hunters, I would probably go either Chad or Trent, just because I thought it was really cool to see Leatherface fight Jason. But realistically, he was just here. But to be fair, he was just here in that way of like not being offensively just here. Like he was, I kind of like how we talked about the last movie. I would describe Trent in this movie. She was better in that movie, but I would describe him in the kind of how I felt about Mary Beth in the last movie. She was there. She didn't offend me at all. She didn't add anything for it to me either. That's how I felt about Trent in this movie. I had zero issues with Trent, but I also didn't love anything about Trent other than, oh, that's really cool. There were literally, spoiler, we literally get to see a like hand-to-hand fight between Jason and Leatherface. That's cool.
I really like Trent, actually. I mean, this might be more of an end of podcast topic, but I feel like Trent had a lot of dimension.
No, I'm completely. I like Trent too. I just didn't love Trent. Maybe I was being too hard. I thought Trent completely did his job well, which is more than I can say about some of the characters in this movie.
Yeah.
Specifically, I guess I didn't crap on them when they showed up earlier, but I will crap on them later in this notes. I do not like Avery and Leighton in pretty much every scene they're in. They're so annoying, except for one scene, which we'll get to. But yeah, then, oh boy, we get on a boat, and there's a bunch of stuff that happens on this boat. Specifically, like I teased earlier, the worst part of this movie, which is by Vernon, chicken gravy biscuits.
Yep.
This song.
I think this is what really cemented my hate for Vernon.
And I get it. I do. It was at this point where I was like, what is he doing? Because before this, he hadn't done anything offensive to me yet. Like I talked about, I came in wanting to love him because I like the actor a lot. And then this scene happened and I was like, what? No. This wasn't funny the first 2 times you said it, but you now have said it 10 times. Why has the song not ended?
It's a song, and it doesn't... There's, like, no comedic value in it. He's kind of just singing it, and it's really annoying. And that is that. That's the intro to the boat scene, is chicken and biscuits.
And gravy.
There's 2 boats, actually. On the other boat...
On the biscuits.
We have Chad and Trent... Chad and Cletus, sorry. Chad and Cletus. They're there. This scene's kind of slightly humorous. Like we mentioned, they're funny together. Those 2 characters have some pretty good chemistry. So their scene is kind of funny. It's nothing to write home about, but it's there. Then we come back to the main boat. And I think that's actually where we go to the chicken and biscuit song.
Yeah.
Before we then have Reverend Zombie, who I believe is talking to Mary Beth at this point. And he's telling her his theory about how if they cut off Victor's head, he can't come back.
Pretty sound. Yeah. And something we've all kind of been wondering, like, you can chop him in the head. What if you just took it off? You know?
Then we have Vernon, who is trying to hit on Mary Beth. I guess, maybe it was supposed to, like, pay homage to the first movie of her being like, I'm not here to be with you, kind of what she did with, I'm blanking on the character's name.
Ben.
Yes. Yeah, Ben from the first movie. Like, I think this was supposed to be, like, an homage to that, maybe, but it was once again a scene where I'm like, okay, cool, he's trying to be, like, funny and hit on her, and then he goes over and, like, kind of talks bad about her to, Zombie, and Zombie's just like, oh, whatever. And then the only times I think Vernon made me laugh in this whole movie was when he did a Tony Todd impression back at Tony Todd. That got me. When he's like, he was just like, he was doing like a Tony Todd voice. I don't remember. He said like 3 words as like at the end of each like sentence he'd say, and I just like, it's like voodoo, and it was like that's funny. That's awesome. Getting to do a Tony Todd impression to Tony Todd, I think is great. Here's the thing. It's a shame that the comedic relief character, that was my favorite moment with him. Because it's not the greatest joke ever. It's just a joke. That in any other movie, like for example, comparing it, it's not compared to every comedic character we've ever seen, but to the last movie. There was 2 or 3 jokes where I was like, Misty nailed that joke. That joke, because she was my favorite of the comedic character in the last movie. And I was like, that joke was great. But I thought everything she said, for the most part, was pretty funny. This character, his best joke would have been like the passing, like the random line she'd say kind of example. Does that make sense? Am I like?
Yeah. Your comparison makes sense.
It's the best he did, and I did get a little chuckle out of me, which his character was supposed to get belly laughs out of me, and the most he ever got was this chuckle.
Sharp exhale through the nose.
Yeah, that's probably all it was. I don't laugh out loud if I'm not with someone. I've been on the internet long enough that I laugh inside.
Something warrants a good laugh from me. I'll give it a laugh.
Oh, there are times
this movie did no such thing.
That's fair. And Chris,
I was staving off the need to fall asleep most of this movie.
To be fair, maybe you came in tired then, because I don't think this movie was ever boring enough to fall asleep, personally. But hey, you know what? We've already established that we have different opinions on this movie. Where did we left off with him doing the Tony Todd impression? We have a scene where all the characters are walking through the swamp. None of the jokes really land, is what I wrote. Because they're all kind of, it's like, we'd have two characters talking, they make a joke or two, we can let them keep walking, we pan the camera to the next people following them in the line.
Next pair.
And this is one of the first moments where I was like, I hated the Avery Leighton dynamic. It was like, why are okay, cool.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, it's like, this is like that.
And he's so emotionless in every single scene.
Then I said, for some stupid reason, because it's really what it is at this point in the plot, they do the lamest horror trope ever of, let's split up. And it's like, why?
And then Mary Beth says, like, that would be a bad idea. And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
And Tony's like, oh, no, it will cover more ground.
Yeah. So they split off into groups of two. We got two and one group of four.
Yeah.
Because reasons. So we got Cletus and Chad. We got Avery and Leighton. We got John and Vernon. And then we have our, spoiler alert, main four. Is there five? There might be five of them. There's five of them. The main five.
Yeah, there is five.
Sorry. Once again, we split up into groups of two, except for the one group of five. Like, it's just, whatever. Like, obviously, yeah, they have an odd number, so maybe one group needed to have a group of three.
Mary Beth, Uncle Bob, Reverend Zombie,
Justin,
and Justin.
Yep.
Who is not Sean.
No. But
he's looking for Sean Justin.
Yes, that is a whole running thing, which I think at this point we already has somewhat established is he thinks his brother is still alive because Reverend Zombie's kind of lying to him about it.
Yeah.
Some cool dramatic irony.
Yeah.
Story.
I don't mind it. I think maybe it went on a little too long. There was maybe one too many scenes of him thinking he was alive, like them making that the focal point of a scene. It's like, okay, cool, he's dead. We all know he's dead. Yes, that is the definition of dramatic irony, is the audience knows something the character doesn't. But maybe they never added anything until he finds out to those scenes. They just kept happening.
Okay.
And like, the first couple times, I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, no, that's fair. He really wants to, but then I was like, okay, cool. He still thinks he's out there. Oh, cool. Reverend Zombie's still lying to him because Reverend Zombie's a bad person. We get it. Yes, Reverend Zombie's bad. We get it. But yeah, so our first group we follow is Cletus and Chad, who go to hunt some gators. Cletus doesn't believe the story of Victor Crowley. Then they hear Victor call out Daddy. And Victor, he pops out of the bushes. And he tackles Chad. And then repeatedly smashes the blunt end of the top part, the blunt part of the axe. Like, not the blades, but like where like the top of, like where the handle comes out of the blade. Yeah.
There is the sharp parts, and then there is the part top in between.
Yeah, and he's bashing his head with that repeatedly, excessively, and the violent. And I'll be honest, this is one of the few kills I felt of the main kills that I liked because it wasn't stupid, and there is one comedic kill that I liked, and there's one other kill that I don't dislike. But a lot of the kills I felt like in this movie just didn't work. This one felt a lot like that first movie of let's just obliterate someone on camera, which that's cool.
This was effective, and I do feel like also though it was a little bit. I mean, he raises his hatchet, and then the blunt
there is.
I chuckled at this kill.
That's fair. There is definitely still a comedic value of he's killing him with an axe, but not killing him with an axe.
The dull part. Yeah.
But yeah, I liked it. I liked this kill. And then. Also, the hatchet, in quotes. I don't remember if I remember to do that. It's in quotes, because it might be a hatchet, it might not be. I don't know. It might be a hatchet. One guy on, one YouTube video I watched of the first movie, the guy seemed like a burly outdoors kind of guy, and he seemed very adamant that this was not a hatchet in the first movie. So I want to take his word for it. But he might have been wrong. The guy had an epic beard. You can't have that kind of a beard and not know what a hatchet and an axe are.
Hatchet.
But yeah.
Wait a minute, you've got a beard.
Yeah, but mine's not a good beard. Like mine's it's okay. This guy had you can't see my hand, but the video listeners can. Like it was down to my chest, like where it would be down to his chest, not my chest. It wasn't on me, but
yeah.
But yeah. So he smashes his head eventually in. The scene goes on for maybe it's honestly, I would argue it's like that perfect level of you feel like it's going on just too long before the climax where you go, it brings you right back in. Like there is a moment because I would argue the first couple hits, just blood's coming up and his face isn't changing at all. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of lame. Are we not going to get like a head smash? And then it goes on for just a couple more times, like, oh, nothing's happening. And then the head smashes, and I'm like, oh, you got me back in. But yeah. It's something you don't normally see, I feel like, in horror, that like element of taking something a little bit too long till the point where you come back. It's a big thing in comedy, which, yes, this is a horror comedy, but like this wasn't that comedic of a scene. There was some dark comedic value to it, but there was a lot of like that comedy style of going too far. Like, it's a show that I don't love, but I think Family Guy at times did a really good job of like the Peter hitting his knee bit, where it goes on just long enough that you start going, why is this still happening? And then it goes on 3 more times and you're like, you got me back in. That's not for everyone, I get it. Some people would still be like, I always hate that scene. And that's fair. But that's, I think, the perfect example of that kind of comedy thing of taking something just past that point of where you're tired of it, where it becomes funny again. And that's what I felt like this did, but for horror. For this scene. Not this movie in general. That scene. That kill. But yeah, then we're done. Because Cletus runs away. And we leave that scene. Now we go to the big group, which is Trent, Uncle Bob, Mary Beth, Reverend Zombie, and Justin. Reverend Zombie reveals to Justin that his real plan is to lead Uncle Tom and Trent to their deaths at the hands of Victor Crowley to hopefully end the curse, because they were the ones who killed Victor. Well, technically his dad.
And this is really interesting.
Dad killed him, but...
Well... Okay, yeah. They do that all the time, like little kids murdered Victor in cold blood with their bare hands. I think, well, I don't know about that.
I mean, they did burn down his house because they were trying to prank him. Like, I'll give you, it was more of an accidental death, but those little kids were little turds, and that's the reason this happened. Like,
they manslaughtered him.
Sure, I'll give you, it is more of a manslaughter what they did, but it was still... A lot of times not a lot of times, but sometimes in manslaughter, it's like you accidentally got to that position that happened. These kids went, we want to torture this poor kid with a deformity, and then he died. Like, there was no justification for what they were doing at the start.
That is true.
So
the more interesting thing to me about this scene is that all the while, like starting with Hatchet 1, Reverend Zombie has been this really cheap figure. And like we see that on display of this whole like that he gives to the hunters with the cape and that music, like, and now it's like, okay, he actually believes at least some of his voodoo, which is kind of cool. But
then also, like, something I actually saw, which I didn't even notice the first time I watched it, but when I was watching the making of, Adam Green brought up once again just the brilliance of Tony Todd, like the tons of calls he'd get, like, who are my character's grandparents? How much did his cane cost? Like, he just wanted to like get enveloped in what this character was, and one of the things is like, does he believe he has magic? No, he's a liar. Does he want other people to believe that he believes he has magic? Which I feel like kind of in this scene is like a great example of that, where he like does like this little mystical thing with his hand and puts it on his head to tell him, I don't know if Sean is alive. Like, because he's trying to make Justin think that he thinks he has magic. And like, it's such a... Once again, like we've all mentioned, the best part of this movie is Tony Todd, and this scene is one I didn't even notice the first time going through, but just adds to why Tony Todd is the best part of this movie. Is because once I saw that clip of it, I was like, oh my gosh, that is so true. I didn't even know, really, like, there was so much sincerity in him trying to trick Justin into thinking that he was actually looking for it, even though Justin kind of plays it off like, okay, whatever, weirdo. But you could tell in the sincerity of like his motions and his facial expressions that Tony Todd's Reverend Zombie wanted Justin to believe he was actually mystical in that scene.
Okay.
And I was like, that's awesome. Tony Todd is awesome. Spoiler alert. I know you didn't know that coming to this, but Tony Todd is amazing. Tony Todd, another guy who has a history of being in some crappy movies. Those sequels, like the Candyman sequels. I've never heard anything good about them. The first one, and the most recent one, I've heard good things. But 2 and 3, that Tony Todd is in, haven't heard great things. Looking forward to watching those at some point. But yeah, So he tells him his plan, and also reveals like, hey, Sean's still out there, maybe, or not, to be fair, he doesn't even directly lie to him here. He does that like subverting like the question. He goes, I don't know, but he's obviously still lying to him and leading him to believe that there's a chance when he knows he's dead. But I guess Reverend Zombie has morals. He won't outright lie to Justin. He'll just lead him to believe something that he knows is not true.
Well, once again, we don't know if he knows it's not true.
I think,
like he says later, like he's taken the word of Mary Beth.
I look at that line as more him trying to play like to save face. I think
I agree.
He 100% believes Mary Beth, and he's like, well, why would Mary Beth lie about all these people being dead? He knows they're dead. He just doesn't want Justin to know that because he wants to use Justin. Because he is a liar and a crook. Like good old Uncle Bob and his bad acting let us know he's a bad person, Mary Beth. Yeah, he's bad.
Yeah.
Then we cut back to Cletus, who tries to escape in his boat. And it's a little bit of a comedic scene of him trying to get on the boat, but he's like too fat to get on immediately. So he kind of stumbles for a little bit. It wasn't great. It didn't make me laugh or probably even smirk, but it happened.
It did happen. Much like a lot of things in the movie, it did happen.
Once again, Chris is going to be more negative on this movie than either me or Isaiah, it seems. And I kind of expected that, one, from his text, and two, just because, like we established last week, if you're somehow watching this episode first, weird choice, but Chris is not a huge fan of slasher films. So he is going to also, like we kind of already established, crap on just slasher tropes of the makeup changes. It sucks, but it happens, and I'm willing to just immediately not care, because it happens. I understand that you can't make the makeup identical later. But I can also understand that if you really want to be invested, that could take you out of it. I'm willing to play devil's advocate and say I see what you're saying, but also wholeheartedly disagree.
Do what Halloween does, get a nice
The mask changes in like every movie. As someone who just watched them, it looks so bad in some of those movies. No, they also do a horrible job at that. I think like specifically 4 and 5's mask really starts getting crappy. 3 doesn't have the mask.
I've only seen like 1, 2, and I've seen 3 as well.
3 is...
And then the new ones.
That's fair, but those are outliers of, yes, that last one, 2018, tried their darndest to recreate the mask from 1 and 2, which were shot, relatively speaking, back-to-back, so they just reused the mask. But anytime there's a jump in time, you have to redo effects. It sucks, because, yeah, sometimes you get crappy effects, but it's not like Victor Crowley looked good in the first movie. I don't think he looks worse in this movie. He just looks like crap, and maybe a little bit different crap. Victor Crowley's design is
a little bit different. He looks a lot different.
I thought he looked pretty much the same. I did not notice a difference. That's me. You thought he did, and that's fine. He probably did, but it wasn't enough that I noticed it.
Okay.
I just went, oh, it's Victor Crowley. He looks stupid. Because that was one of our complaints of the last movie. None of us liked the design of Victor Crowley. He doesn't look good.
He's pretty rubbery.
He is the worst. His design is the worst part of that first movie, in my opinion. Because he's just so... Kane Hodder's performance as the character was great, but it's like, yeah, but when he's looking like an idiot while he does it, do you care? I mean... But yeah, whatever. I still love that movie and mildly enjoy this movie. Let's get back to the plot. Because Cletus is on his boat, and he can't get the start for a little bit, but eventually does. Right as Victor Crowley pops out, throws him into the water. We get a Wilhelm scream, because why the heck not?
Dude, yes.
Oh, God, it's so obnoxious.
Yeah. To be fair...
And then his jaw gets ripped off, and he makes a much more believable,
he doesn't get his jaw ripped off.
Does it?
Nope. He gets his head shoved into the propeller.
And it
comes up looking like a Looney Tunes explosion.
Dude, it's just so splayed out.
Yeah.
And there's like a central ham bone looking thing in the middle.
Yeah. I did not like this death. This is the example of... here's the thing. Once again, it's more stupid, but it was at least still visceral in its stupidity, but it was still stupid. Like, that's not how a person's face would look on
this is the second Wilhelm scream we get, because there is another one in the montage in the very beginning of the movie.
You might
really
where the guy's jaw is ripped off, and he gives like the Wilhelm scream, and then he gives like the.
I did not notice that. I cannot confirm nor deny if it happened. But yeah, maybe it happened. I don't remember. Well, it won't matter because we won't be on the podcast. I'm not going to stop the podcast to listen to a clip.
Oh, it's not. I'm just going to show you that one.
I know which one you're talking about. The guy getting his jaw ripped off. I'm not saying. I don't remember it at all, and I don't remember there really being a lot of audio in that scene except for him talking over it. I don't remember.
Every time the Wilhelm scream happens, it catches my attention.
It normally does for me because I think it is, as much as it's an iconic thing from movies for some reason. There are some amazing movies that have that scream in it. I think Lord of the Rings uses it. Some of the early Star Wars movies use it. That is like a cinema soundbite to use for some reason, but it does. I agree. It sucked in this scene, and I couldn't miss it here. So,
yeah,
I'm not saying it didn't happen in that first scene, but I also feel like every time I hear that scream, I go, "Oh, Wilhelm," and then I move on. So I feel like I would have noticed it, but I might have not, and that's fine. It really, if it was another scene, it doesn't matter. That scene was a montage. It didn't matter.
Totally understandable if you blocked out parts of this movie.
All right, Chris. All right. I didn't block out parts of this movie. I liked this movie. But yeah, so Cletus gets his face Looney Tunes-ified. And then we cut to Leighton and Avery, who are walking in the woods. And we get dreadfully boring character development between the two of them. Oh my gosh, is this scene... I take back what I said about Vernon. At least the chicken and biscuits and gravy scene, I went, what the crap is going on? That's a reaction. This scene, I went, oh, it's still happening.
This is a good time to refill your popcorn.
Yeah, go take a
to tune out mentally. If you weren't already, just check out because it does not matter.
You're so negative. Can't handle it. We get, they're definitely boring with these two. Before Avery eventually pulls Leighton in for a kiss, he stops kissing her because, as we established earlier, he's getting married.
Man.
Soon.
He's going to be a married man.
But hey, she, opens up her top to reveal her breasts, and that convinces him to go, oh, I don't care about my wife. Oops.
Yes, he has this Porky Pig.
Yeah, so they go back to making out. They kind of fall out of frame as we cut away to Mary Beth's crew, who find the shed empty of family bodies. She then says, all right, I guess I'll go to the house to look for them. So she goes inside the Crowley house. They all follow her, obviously, because that's the crew is all sticking together. Then we cut back to in my opinion, a hilariously comical harmonica scene. I really liked the dial. This is like some of the I think the comedic stuff was this is the only comedy that I felt like really landed for me. The back and forth, which I can't even repeat. It's vulgar and stuff, but like the way she would say things and want him to respond, I thought was very fun.
Tell me you love me.
Yeah, tell me you love me more than baby Jesus. Like he's like, I don't feel comfortable saying that.
That's appropriate
because they're in the middle of playing harmonica. It's great. And it keeps being great.
I love you equally is what he comes to.
About the same, yeah.
About the same. Then Victor Crowley shows up, and he chops off Leighton's head mid-harmonica. They're still playing harmonica. Avery doesn't even notice, because I guess his body kind of goes into convulsions, which makes her think that he's still there. And then eventually she realizes that he stops moving, and she realizes what's going on. She sees Victor Crowley. She starts crawling away, still, pants around her knees. This part I didn't love, but there's a part in this kill that I do love. This part is not it. He puts the hatchet
it's
in quotes. Yeah.
It is.
I know it is. The hatchet in quotes. The hatchet from the title. It's hatchet trademarked from the title.
The trademark hatchet.
Yeah, into her private area.
And
no.
I forgot about that. Yes.
No, that part, Isaiah. The second half of this kill, I love. This first half, where he shoves it into her privates. Yeah, he just shoves it in there, pulls it out, then puts it in her sternum, and you're like, okay, cool, wow, cool. So bloody boob shot, funny, haha, okay. Then he can't get the hatchet out, and he struggles with it for a while, and then we cut away as he's about to pull it out. We cut to a tree, and we throw a bucket of blood at the tree, which is the first and only time that's happened in this movie so far.
Yep.
And this might be the best joke in the movie of them acknowledging the buckets of blood. That was one of our, like, I'd say none of us say it took us out of the last movie, but we all acknowledged it. It was stupid as crap and pointless. And this movie, they said, all right, you're kind of right. That's why they didn't do it for the most of it, but then made it be a moment here, and it got me. I was like, bucket of blood at the tree. That's great.
It was the joke that landed.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I kind of wasn't looking at my notes there. I was just remembering what happened there. So now I have to find myself in my notes again. I wasn't reading.
Improv.
That was the point at which I texted Austin, and I was like, yes, bucket of blood on the tree.
That was a great scene.
Very nice.
I think that was that might be the best joke so far of the two movies. That single joke was great because the buckets of blood was so stupid. It made no sense. So this movie, they said, you're right. But let's make a joke about it. And it's hilarious. Because it's kind of one of those moments where it's like, it's fun when you say, because here's the thing. If that was one of my biggest complaints about that last movie was that, I didn't have that many complaints. But some people, from what I saw, really crapped on that movie because of that. And that's fine. If that took you out of it, whatever. I don't care. But I'm sure for 4 years or whatever, they heard that as the big complaint of their movie. So this was like a screw you. You're right. That was a mistake, but we were first-time horror directors. Screw you, and we're gonna do it as a joke here. And I respect it. It was funny. I like a good screw you joke because it's also not. It wasn't mean-spirited in a screw you joke. Sometimes that happens, but this one wasn't mean-spirited. It was just stupid. But yeah, now we cut back to the main crew and at the Crowley house, and they hear Victor roar. And then they barricade the door. Which, to be fair, I started writing this down, and then I realized it didn't matter because we immediately cut away to John and Vernon, who are scared by some noises before we hear a chainsaw. Ooh! Now we go back to now we cut away because the scene cuts back and forth a lot. Now we cut back to Mary Beth telling Justin that Sean's dead, and Justin confronts Reverend Zombie about lying to him. Then we cut back to John and Vernon, where Crowley shows up with a giant chainsaw.
A comically long chainsaw.
Yeah.
It is literally a Looney Tunes chainsaw.
6 feet long chainsaw. There are long chainsaw bars.
They definitely make a point of pointing out how big it is, because it's they zoom in on the chainsaw coming into shot, and it's just and it just keeps going and keeps going.
Yeah.
And once again, I'm no expert on chainsaws, but the end of the chainsaw, the handle part, the way it connected to the chainsaw looked very reminiscent of one of the chainsaws from Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Obviously, yes, I'm sure there are tons of chainsaws that look like that, but there are also chainsaws that don't look like that, with the way it was almost like a little spike pattern as it went where the plastic went over the metal, and it reminded me a lot of. I actually think it was from videos I saw about Leatherface, a Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, which means I think it was probably on purpose because they have the Leatherface from that movie. I mean, that chainsaw in that movie was not 6 feet long because that's stupid. But, yeah. Then he walks over to him with it, and they shoot him a couple times, and Crowley just kind of doesn't care.
Yeah.
And then he cuts both of them in half, crotch to head. Specifically, there is a moment where as they're lifting, screaming, and there's blood everywhere, I think it's Vernon's testicles just hit the ground.
Yeah, just bloop.
Yeah.
Drop out.
Yep. It's it's stupid. I didn't care. It wasn't it was funny, not really, but it was also kind of a cool kill. And also, this kill specifically is part of the reason we watched the unrated version specifically, because when I was when I found out there was an unrated and a rated R version that we almost watched, that in the original cut of this movie, or not the original cut. The original cut's the unrated cut because this didn't go to theaters. But to get it, or maybe it did some, but the reason they made a rated R cut was when they wanted to put it on Redbox, because Redbox will not let unrated movies be on their, will not put unrated movies in their boxes, so they had to make a rated R cut. I don't get it, because I would argue that a rated R movie is the same kind of situation of you can't check the age of the person, and those are also not something a 12-year-old should be watching. But for whatever reason, Redbox, at least in 2010's rules, were you couldn't have an unrated movie, but you could have a rated R movie, so they had to cut it. And in that cut, the shot starts, he puts the chainsaw between their legs, and they cut to the next scene. Like, that's how badly cut down that movie was. Here's the thing, yes, the testicle joke was stupid, but the gore was kind of cool, and I would have been disappointed if I didn't see that. Yep. So, yeah.
Also, what a strong chainsaw to be able to lift two fully grown men off the ground.
I mean, yeah, but what a strong... You've seen Halloween 2, right? You said that, the first one, and the one in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
What a strong pen that Michael Myers lifted that girl off the ground with. Like, horror movies' logic is not real.
That's a good pen.
It's not realistic. He
good
he
pen.
Lifted her with a pen.
Was it a plastic pen?
I think so.
I got nothing.
It was just a pen.
It's all about the angle, you know. It's
Sure.
close enough to the point of pivot.
And that's the
Leverage.
same. That's the same thing with
Yeah,
the chainsaw.
it's all about the
just
leverage.
about the way the
See,
leverage.
since they were so close to the end, there's no realistic way he should have been able to lift.
Pure strength. Pure strength. Pure strength from Ghost.
The blade should have snapped. I tell you what.
You know, you're right. That is the
chainsaw
flaw
is
in this
steel,
movie about
German-made.
a repeater ghost who is stuck on the day he died was the fact that the chainsaw didn't break.
And that's the only flaw I found in this movie.
Now, we know that's not true.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he lifts them off the ground. Now we cut back to the final four. Is it final four? I think it's final five still. I don't know why I wrote final four.
Yeah. It's a 5.
Wrote final four. It's 5.
For now.
And then Justin pees himself. Because more pee jokes. Gosh,
Oh, he's scared.
darn it. Horror. Stop doing pee jokes. No.
We watch it like trickle into his pew. It's pretty bad.
It reminded me of Seed of Chucky. There's a character in that movie that likes to pee himself a lot. Not likes to, but he pees himself a lot. No, he doesn't like it. He just does. But
You don't know.
It's just so... I'm tired of pee jokes. They're not funny. Who thinks pee jokes are funny? Like 10-year-olds. 10-year-olds shouldn't be seeing Hatchet 1 or 2.
I don't know.
Sound logic. I so urgently have to urinate, so y'all just carry on without me for like 13 seconds.
No, you just pee yourself right there. Pee joke.
I just put it in like I am.
Reverend Zombie reiterates his theory in earshot of Mary Beth. Uncle Bob then demands that Mary Beth hides because they heard the noise. And Justin takes her to hide, I believe it's in his old room. Not his old room, that's where he lives still, but what's his name? I'm forgetting. Victor Crowley. I don't know how I forgot Victor Crowley's name. I've said it like 12 times at least in this movie. But yeah, Victor takes him to Victor's bedroom, and Justin locks him and her in there. And Mary Beth reveals that she's here mostly for revenge. Cool. Do we get it? Yeah, why wouldn't you want revenge? But alright, why are we making that a big reveal? Is it really that important? But okay, fine.
Well, the other characters don't know it, so now the dramatic irony's gone.
Yeah.
I guess. I don't know.
Then Justin tells Mary Beth the theory of how to stop Crowley. The theory about, letting Trent and her uncle die. I don't know why you'd tell her that. I mean, I guess she, half overheard it, but I still, if I was him, I wouldn't have told her. Yeah. But whatever. He tells her, so Mary Beth runs off to save Uncle Bob, leaving Justin, who backs up, scared from rustling, because in this bedroom of Victor's, there's just a giant open wall, basically, just covered in forest. Which, real quick about the forest, which actually I think is really cool in this movie. We talked about the last movie, how they, made a swamp on a desert. This movie, and I couldn't tell.
They made a desert on a swamp.
No. It's all on a soundstage. like almost all of it. I mean, there's certain shots of like probably them on the water and stuff that had to be real, but like anything else was like shot in a stage, which
it's just a really big kiddie pool.
No, I don't think so. But like, I think there's some credit to be deserved because I never once went, oh, they're obviously on a soundstage in this swamp.
No, I never would have guessed.
It felt like it was outside in all the scenes that were supposed to be outside, but it wasn't for most of them. So respect to that. Respect to the production designer who was able to make a swamp out of nothing. It's a little less impressive than doing it on a desert because, you know, the irony of a wet place being in a desert, but it is still really impressive to do it this way. Then Justin, he backs himself up from being scared. He backs himself into a closet to hide in because, you know, when you're in a horror movie, the best place to hide is the closet. Nothing ever goes wrong there. Never. Not once.
Oh no, there's spiders in the closet though.
Spiders.
And not only are there spiders.
Whoa, no, pause. I want to talk about spiders.
Yeah, it is a tarantula.
There is a tarantula, but he noticed there were spiders because of webs. I could be wrong, but I do not believe tarantulas spin webs.
You're not going to find a tarantula hanging in the air.
Yeah. Just saying. We could have just had some, like a daddy long leg looking fake spider on him. Maybe a few to get the, scary moment. But instead we went with a tarantula toy. I mean... But
they wanted something bulbous and hairy, you know, like it's the same principle behind like they always use these huge rounds whenever people like shoot 9mm pistols or whatever. It's like this down from a 30-30 or whatever. Same deal, like let's put a big fat spider in there.
I don't know, I feel like you still could have done a couple.
Also, they don't spin webs, but they do produce silk.
But there were webs that he hit from the wall and the ceiling. So, and then what's that? Also, Victor Crowley is here. He's also in the closet, and he, like, throws Justin out of the closet, maybe. Justin kind of just comes flying out of the closet, but we don't see, like, Victor standing there after he threw him, so he just pops out of the closet. And then Crowley kind of follows him a little bit before throwing his, put my notes down, hatchet into his back. And then he kind of riles around at the wall with the hatchet sticking out of his back. And Victor...
He grabs his infamous gas-powered.
Yeah.
And it is really gaseous in this movie. Like, the last movie we were wondering, like, is that a gas one? Oh, I guess it is. This one, he's like... Like, we see the big tank and everything.
Yeah, I mean...
for a second, I thought the tank was filled with pee. I was like, Cracker Jack.
It was him all along.
He gave his pee bottle to Victor Crowley. How nice.
So he pulled out his gas-powered belt sander, which was one of the coolest kills of the last movie. They said, hey, let's try to do that again, but not as well.
Pee-powered belt sander, right?
It's not pee. Stop with the pee jokes. We are better than the Hatchet writing team in that way.
I was going to say, well, Hatchet's not better than that.
We're better than that. We're better than pee jokes.
Sure.
All right.
Yes, because I got on a high horse about being better than pee jokes, so I can't say we're not.
You can't
we'll make fart jokes.
Exactly.
Oh,
and poop jokes.
Highbrow.
Yes. Because we're gentlemen.
Highbrow.
Yeah, so he takes the sander over to him, but hey, wait, he's not in the same position as before in the last movie. This is the back of his head, so he takes it to the back of his head, and there's blood everywhere, as you would expect. And then eventually we cut, after a little bit of him doing it, we pull away, and we see, like, part of his skull gone and his brain there, and it looks pretty cool. Not great. Like a lot of the effects in this movie, it's good enough. But when you were coming off, that was one of my biggest praises of the last movie, excluding the buckets of blood, was the gore of that last movie. Like, that's why I loved that movie, was because it was so violent. And in this movie... every kill, except for maybe Joe Lynch's jaw getting ripped off that might have had a Wilhelm scream. I cannot confirm nor deny. I thought most of the kills in this movie kind of sucked. Because, like, none of the kills were great in this movie. Even the one that I thought was really funny, the kill itself was technically off screen so they could do the bucket of blood joke. But, whatever. I don't know. It's not like it was bad. If I were to really think about this...
It just wasn't as good as the other belt standing kill.
If you look at... But it's just... That was this movie in general, the kills. It's just not as good.
Yeah.
If you compare this to any Friday the 13th movie's kills, Halloween's kills, Scream, any of those movies, for the most part, they don't have cool kills, really. Like, Friday the 13th tries occasionally, but normally not that well. I love the franchise, but for the most part, their kills are lackluster at times. But, like, if this movie was any of those other movies, these kills would be like, whoa, can you believe that kill? But when you're coming off Hatchet 1, man, were the kills a disappointment in this movie. Like this kill. Because then he takes it, he finishes it off by taking it to the brain explodes in a more viscera. It's, on paper, that sounds awesome, and realistically, I'm jaded because of how great the first one was. It still is. If I take myself out of it, this kill was still really cool. But it's just a shame that you go from great kills to kind of cool one. But yeah.
That's fair, dude. Yeah.
Then where Victor smashes through the door. And he knocks over Uncle Bob, kind of. I mean, you can't really see him knock over Uncle Bob because, like, it's one of those things where, once again, Uncle Bob falls back slowly, and then we cut to him on the ground. Because, once again, nothing against Tom Holland, the person, because, you know, he's not an actor. He's definitely not a stunt person. But just, there's a couple moments that are supposed to be physical with him where he's just not able to. I'm assuming because of his age. Maybe he just didn't want to do it. I don't know. But yeah, it was like, okay, cool. He knocked down Bob. Then Mary Beth tries to attack Crowley, but for her troubles, she just gets thrown against the wall. Like, picked up and just tossed. Which, hey, you know, he probably couldn't do that to the actress from the first movie. Just saying. Smaller Mary Beth has her advantages. We can do this kill easier. Do this scene easier. Less work on Kane Hodder. Yeah. Then Crowley turns to Trent, who I think, you know, like, tried to get his attention. Then they struggled back and forth for a bit in a scene that's cut between, but, well, we'll talk about what's cut between in a second, but this scene, I just want to get out of the way, I think is really cool. I've already teased it a few times throughout this, but the fact that a movie exists, and even if it is, yes, third movie's Leatherface, the fact that we get to see an actor who portrayed Leatherface take on an actor who portrayed Jason in a hand-to-hand, even fight is awesome.
It is pretty cool.
Like, and it ends really cool, too. It's probably... I know I keep re-saying that after I remember a couple. This actually might be the best kill in the movie, is his kill that's coming up in a little bit.
It's one of the better kills.
Yeah, it does have a little bit of a problem that I'll get to at the very end of it. There's a little bit of that stupid CGI element of just like, okay, cool. Yeah. But yeah, just in general, this... I don't think my notes give it justice for this scene. It's back and forth. They're breaking stuff over each other. It's fun. They're going back and forth. And, like, it's the first person in this whole franchise who's, like, been able to stand toe-to-toe with Victor Crowley, which is that's always a cool moment in horror when you get to have those even fights. Like we talked about Friday the 13th, the reboot, when Jared Padalecki was up against Jason. It was believable because that guy's like 6'5". Like, it's cool when you see those believable. Yeah. You see those believable back-to-back fights. That's fun. And this movie had that. So, in this scene, at least. And there was also another scene that's a lot shorter because of the age of the actor involved. But they do still have that kind of hand moment, which we'll get to. But yeah, as this is happening, we're cutting back and forth between Reverend Zombie, who is pulling Mary Beth from an injured Uncle Bob, not letting her help him up. And then they lock Bob in the house right as Crowley finishes his fight with Trent by setting his head on the kitchen table. And at first he breaks his leg, actually. He, like, kicks his leg out and gets him to fall down.
At the knee,
yeah. And then he puts his head on the table and he curb stomps him. You know, I believe the director said that he was inspired by American History X, like, and he was one of his flaws in that movie was he felt like they should have shown the kill because he's a weird horror freak. He wants to see the head, like, get broken and stuff, you know. Can you be surprised with what he's made? But yeah, so he's like, oh, I want to do that. I want to curb someone. So they don't curb him, but they, you know, table him. Which, yeah, he kicks off his head. It breaks at the jaw. the body falls down, blood pumping out in the head. Yeah.
Slides across
Upper
the table.
lip up, slides across the table. And honestly, when it slid across the table, I was fine with it. But then it cut to a shot of it from like head on where we see his eyes close. And it's so obviously CG because there's no way to do an eye closing like that. It's not. I get it, but just don't do it. I don't feel like his eyes closing added to the scene. It just made me go, great, a CG kill. That was his whole big thing about that first movie was, we do everything practical. Not this scene. Like, that was a whole big thing about how they like, did the hiding the shot behind when they killed the old lady in the last one. And that was really cool. But it was done practical. We could have done this one practical with just a little prop head sliding across and then just don't show his eyes. But whatever. We had to show his eyes because... whatever. And then... yeah, whatever. He realizes that he's in there, locked in there with Uncle Bob. And we see this whole scene from outside because, once again, Tom Holland is old. He can't do anything.
And there is just
blood.
blood
Come on.
splattering everywhere.
Then this is a scene that I hate because it undermines what we already said, my favorite joke in the franchise so far. This scene, due to us not being able to see him, but wanting to show that he died, is just buckets of blood hitting the walls and like the windows and like holes in the walls and it's like this totally undermines you acknowledging how stupid buckets of blood were because now you just did it to do it.
You just got to depend on them. Yeah.
And like I do somewhat get it. You for some reason you chose to cast Tom Holland as Uncle Bob so you couldn't have him do anything physically because he can't apparently. And like. And I think it was at this point where I fully realized it. Like earlier in the movie where he like kind of fell down, I was like, "Oh, okay, this is a little awkward." But then when we cut away, I was like, "Oh, it's because he's too old to do anything." Got it. We can't do anything with this actor. Actor in quotes because he's a famous, very talented writer-director who's not a good actor, but he's an actor in this movie, nonetheless. But yeah, while this is the blood is splashing, we have Reverend Zombie. He does this little evil monologue that, once again, is really good. I didn't write down any of the specific things he said, but it's Tony Todd eating the scene because he's Tony Todd. Like, I think all of us will agree on that. Like, and we've already said it. I've said it 4 times now, but like, Tony Todd is a treasure. I tried to call Danielle Harris a treasure, and Chris crapped on me, and that's fine. He didn't like her, and that's fine. But we all agree Tony Todd is a treasure who needs to be protected because he is. Oh, I love Tony Todd.
Tony, Reverend Zombie's, talking about how the curse is going to be broken now and the swamp's going to be his.
And he reveals to her, we've killed, Trent, who was there, and Uncle Bob. And then she goes, well, no, that's just my dad's friend. Uncle Bob, or my uncle, my actual
she doesn't
uncle?
Reveal that until after Reverend Zombie, threatens her life.
Oh, you're right.
She's like, I'm going to call the cops. You're not going to get away with this.
You're right.
And he's like, well, no one, you're not going to be able to tell anyone. And she's like, well, there's just one thing.
Yeah.
She didn't account for. That's not my uncle.
Yeah, and I thought it's stupid, like, swerve to swerve, but I liked it. Like, I don't, like, it's one of the things.
It worked.
Yeah, no, I just feel
Tom
like.
Holland.
Yeah, no, when I say it's stupid, I more mean in the sense of it was just. I feel like a good twist. It's kind of like we're going to bring up a different director here. Talk about M. Night Shyamalan. M. Night Shyamalan's Sixth Sense is an art piece movie because the twist is teased throughout. The Village, big final twist. I actually think The Village, for the first 90% of the movie, is a really fun movie.
Yeah, and then the end happens.
Then there's the end where they go, but it's happening in real life. And you go, that's literally wasn't teased at all and literally impossible because even if they were in a no-fly zone, a plane still sometimes flies over a no-fly zone and they could have been, it would have been outed. The odds of it, it's so unlikely. That's a bad twist. And I don't think this one took me out of this movie like that one did, but it is also a bad twist because it wasn't teased at all. A good twist, there was at least a hint, so you have that rewatch ability where you go back and go, oh, they hinted at it, which, to be fair, I didn't rewatch the movie, so maybe there is a hint at Uncle Bob now being blood-related in like that stupid, really boring scene with her wearing the Twisted Sister shirt and him being there. Maybe that scene had a hint for it. To be fair, I did not rewatch this movie like I rewatched some of the other ones we've talked about.
And that's fair.
But I just felt like this twist, once again, when I say stupid, I don't mean like it was stupid, I hate it. It's not The Village, M. Night Shyamalan.
It was just an unnecessary
But it was
twist.
just like couldn't we have just had I felt like the twist was just going to be that Victor Crowley came out and that Reverend Zombie didn't know what he was talking about. He thought that was the answer, but it wasn't. There is no answer. He's a monster forever. So we can make sequels. But instead it's like, nah, see? He's still alive because you were wrong. And it's like, okay, sure. All right, sure. That was my reaction was, sure, okay. Sure, Mary Beth.
Anyways, Victor Crowley is now...
He pops out,
coming to attack.
And him and Tony Todd have like this face-to-face double choke spot, which once again, like I said earlier when I hinted at with the Trent one, was cool. It's Candyman and Jason choking each other. That's cool. Maybe is it as cool? Is this movie built off of look at this cool horror person with another horror person? Yes. Like we established, that didn't work for Chris, and I get it. But it works for me because I'm like, he's choking Candyman. Oh, and then he hacks off Candyman's legs.
Yeah, he does cut him in twain.
Yeah, and drops him. And Candyman, Reverend Zombie, Tony Todd, the legend himself, just keeps crawling as, cut in half man until he gets attacked. But yes. But Victor Crowley walks over, steps on his back, and starts to rip out his spine, it seems. Which,
what you would think would be what happens.
And at first I'm like, oh, that's cool. He's going to rip his spine out. Then...
he just gets, like, degloved completely?
Yeah.
Degloved?
He pulls his whole muscles and everything.
He skins
his skin.
Yeah. In one pull. That's not how anything works. And I get it, yes. He's a magical character and it doesn't matter. But, like, ripping out his spine would have been cool because that's something that if you put enough force there, you would. If you put enough force like he was, you would not rip out someone's only their skin. You would not only leave their skin. That's not how that would ever work. You could cut his skin off and slowly skin him, but maybe I'm wrong. I'm not a huge. I guess I'll have to like go buy some like dead animal and test this at some point. But I don't think that's
the animal's muscular system.
I don't think this is possible. And yes, I get it. It's a stupid horror movie where it doesn't have to be, but I feel like ripping a spine out feels more possible, even if it's just as unrealistic. I wouldn't have gone, oh. Okay.
And probably just as impactful.
Yeah.
Counterpoint.
If not more so.
Ripping a spine out is more conventional.
Sure, but sometimes conventional is okay. Sometimes, because also, maybe, once again, this is more of a issue they had when filming it because it just happens. It looks like crap, too, once he comes out. It looks like a crappy dude.
I thought it looked pretty cool. That's just me.
Yeah, that's fair. I have shared throughout this that I enjoyed this movie for the most part. This moment, I was like, really? He just gets yoinked out of his skin?
Yoink.
Okay. Yeah,
he does get yoinked.
Because there's also like there's moments where like kind of feels like you're hearing the spine snap, like it's about to get ripped out, and then it didn't. Which I guess once again they're trying to subvert your expectations because ripping out someone's spine is too normal, and that's why we're not going to... We don't do normal things in this series. And it's like, yeah, sure, I guess you don't. But, like, it would have still been cool if you ripped out his spine. And I felt like this was lame. It was more... Once again, kind of like my reason why I didn't like the face scene. It felt too Looney Tunes. Cartoony. Which, if that's what they were going for, fine, I guess. If that's what they wanted, that's what they wanted. But it just felt too silly. But that's my thoughts. Isaiah disagrees. Chris probably agrees more just because he hated the whole movie. So if I'm complaining about anything, Chris is like, yeah, no, that was a thing to complain about because Chris hates it. But but hey, I didn't
enjoy most parts of this movie.
I know you didn't. We've established that probably too much for some people's liking who are listening to this.
And maybe that's how we've kept some of the viewers who are listening. Who knows?
Maybe. So he's ripped out. Where was that? Yep, alright. Then Mary Beth, right after that, runs up and just tackles him down and she just starts crushing his face with his hatchet. And it is visceral from the start. Like, it is just, unlike earlier, because she's using the hatchet side of it, not the top of it. She just destroys his head, and she goes to leave him after that. She's also yelling at him and cursing at him throughout all of it. She's getting blood splattered over her.
And we get a close-up of a finger twitch. Yeah. And then she comes back with a shotgun.
Yeah. And actually shoots him.
Shoots his head clean. Shoots what's left of his head clean off. Yeah. And I was like, all right.
There we go.
And I think she also, curses at him some more, because, whatever. That's what they do.
And then the movie ends abruptly. In fashion with the first Hatchet.
I disagree. I think there was nothing else for this movie that made sense there. She killed him. The last movie, it's left purposely because they wanted to come back with it, with not knowing what happens. This movie, she kills. I'd argue it already ended when she chopped off his head, and then we got that little last second sting that she immediately crapped on purpose, and then we ended. And I don't see what else you could have done. I mean, I guess you have a second of her walking away, but
it was just like an abrupt cut to black.
I guess.
It didn't feel like a smooth cut. It just was, and then. Which also felt like how the first one ended.
It's fair.
And it's not a jab. It's just something I felt like I should acknowledge.
I didn't notice it, but hey, whatever. I think
since this movie likes to keep in style with itself.
That's true. You are probably right that it was meant to be a callback to the first one. Just like I thought that maybe that Vernon hitting on her was meant to be a callback to the first one. Maybe. Or we're giving it too much credit for those callbacks, and they just happened because Adam Green went, hot girl have guy hit on her, and that's possible. Well, I guess real quick, I say hot girl because I do think she's very attractive, but it's also weird because she still has so much of the same face as she did when she was 8 or 10 in Halloween 4, so it's just weird. It's like, I'm like, oh, I don't like this feeling because she's attractive, but still looks like Jamie Lloyd from Halloween 4, and I'm creeped out. But that's just me, and that's not relevant.
Neither here nor there.
But yeah, my final thoughts, which, as always, we keep doing this because I like the way to end on it, but realistically, this final thoughts point, you already know my thoughts. I liked this movie for the most part. In general, I would say it did everything the first movie did worse, but I still liked it. It was still fun enough. If I were to rate it out of 10, I'd give it a 5, which for me, 5 out of 10 is about as high of a rating as I'll give a movie if I ever want to come back to it at all. If it's lower than a 5, I'm definitely not coming back. A 5, I'm like, there might have been moments that I enjoyed, especially if it's in a franchise, I might want to watch the franchise again. I liked it. I liked moments. I loved Tony Todd. I also established already, I thought, specifically that one scene, Danielle Harris, I thought was one of the best acting I've seen so far, and I thought she delivered from that point on. I always enjoyed what she did. Also, I am the right type of horror fan that the references they made me love it. I loved Leatherface versus Jason, cool. I loved that crap. Is it good? Maybe not. Sure, fine, whatever, but I enjoyed it. It was fun. All right, Chris, you have a minute to crap on it. You've already crapped on it enough.
Yeah, I mean, it is no secret how I feel about this movie. I did not enjoy it. There was one or two scenes that I got a good kick out of, and aside from that, it was a struggle for me to maintain interest at all. Like Austin said, it does everything that the first movie does, but worse. And in my opinion, much worse in a lot of scenes. Most of the humor doesn't land.
Oh, yeah, no, I agree entirely.
Which is, I feel like, part of what the other movie has going for it a lot is that, in between the really cool kills, it's got, some comedy that definitely lands. Whereas this movie is, every scene between a kill, I'm just like, oh, just get to the next kill, please. And that was pretty much the whole movie experience for me. Was just waiting for other people to die.
To be fair, if that's what your complaint, which I can kind of get, this movie would be something we didn't establish, but maybe you noticed as we talked about it, is there are no kills for 40 minutes in this movie.
Yeah, there's a whole middle part where it's just dialogue.
Yep, and I didn't mind it, but if you don't like that dialogue, you're going to have a problem with it. Because the kills don't start... The kills of, like, the final characters, the hunters, don't start till literally 30 minutes before the movie ends.
Yep. I made a point to figure out exactly when that started happening. I was like, all right, and there's 30 minutes left in the movie. All right. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think I generally share Austin's overall opinion or assessment that this was fun, but still in the shadow of the first one. Okay, well, that's not a good way to put it. It was not as good as the first one, but I do think it was distinctive, and it wasn't just using the same formula as the first one. And that's something I very much appreciate. Like, we've said that Tony Todd is the best part of this movie. I don't think that's a controversial observation, but particularly, like, not just his acting, but also his characters, the most intriguing part of this movie because there's so much ambiguity about how much he's right and like how correct he is about his theories, whether or not he believes those theories. I think that's a really cool part of the movie. And Austin, you were totally valid in your opinion on like the plot twist, what makes it good one, what makes it bad one. This is not one of the better plot twists in movies. But why I think it was important was it leaves that ambiguity intact because is the whole repeater theory right? Like, is the way you resolve his repeating...
Is it impossible to resolve now that his name is dead?
Yeah. Her real
we don't know. And I think that's kind of cool. But, yeah, generally, with the more cosmetic stuff, the kills and things like that, yeah, it's just weren't as good. The fact that they start killing the main character so late, I think, is relieved by the fact that they do have other kills earlier on in the movie with just random schmoes in the backstory. So that really didn't bother me too much. I just think that they invested a lot more in the dialogue and the story. Whereas in the first one, which I still liked, was a little bit more conventional in that you round up this diverse cast of characters and watch them get picked off one by one. And in this one, I was wondering, like, they could have just done that again, right? Whole new people going after the same monster. But this one did continue. Like, it picked up where the last one left off very well. Like, in a way that respected the first one, didn't add on new crap to the story in a cumbersome, clunky way. Like, it just flowed well from number one. It's merely just hobbled by acting, frankly, I think. But I like that they... I think there's greater originality to the story. That's something to appreciate. So...
Fair enough. There are our thoughts. We have done it again. We love, especially if Chris disagrees with the general consensus of our group. Not the general consensus. We're not bringing that up again today. Ooh, that goes to whole different discussions when we do that. It typically makes the episode longer because I feel the need to counteract what Chris is saying when I disagree with it. And today's episode is another one of those 2-hour episodes, so I will make the closing comments short and sweet. If you would like to support us, we are on all of the platforms that you can get a podcast on if you watch the video one right now, but want to listen to the audio one, go to all your places. The easiest way would be to go to anchor.fm/Horror Bois, I believe. There's a link in this video if you're on the video version and want it. There's a link to all the audio versions. If you would like to support us, patreon.com/Horror Bois. And that is all except for teasing next week. If you are me or Isaiah, you might be mildly interested in next week because it's Hatchet 3. If you're Chris, you're dreading it because we got 2 more of this franchise to go, baby. Hatchet 3 next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.